I don't think about a tension between patience and moments of revelation, but perhaps it's the case. But I do see a movement, a kind of coupling or tension between moments of opacity, ambiguity, darkness, not having any bearings, and moments of crystallization. For me, I would say actually the moments when things are clear, or when you have your space-time bearings, are moments that are more demanding in patience. I like moments when I'm lost, or moments when I'm just having a purely aesthetic or figural experience, watching flashes of orange or blue or green in this overwhelming blackness. I'm completely taken with those moments, and they don't demand any patience from me as a viewer. And it's the moments when I suddenly begin to orient myself that my patience runs dry very quickly. So I suppose that's why there are the moments of clarity are quite short and quite few and far between, unless we have, say, a 6-minute shot like we do of the captain falling asleep. That's the exact opposite. It's purely static, and that demands a different kind of, not necessarily patience, but perhaps initially patience, but a different kind of engagement with the image. But it's the images of clarity and understanding that, to me, try my patience. I lose interest very quickly. And it's the moments of darkness, of chaos, of anarchy, of discombobulation, where I'm completely taken, I'm in the image, I'm totally taken by the image. Moments of flux, yeah.
Well, because the moment that I slightly start to know where I am, what I'm getting, the kind of image that I'm getting, I just lose completely interest. I also need to, and in the same time, like being lost, I also know if it's good, because it sounds pretentious to say that, but something keep me going. And it's not at the end something that will be a revelation, but like in the moment, there is something that push you toward either, these mysterious things that you're capturing. You don't know exactly what it is, but you know that something is happening. And it's true that it has to do with like maybe not knowing, but it's maybe not like about a revelation. Curiously, I don't have to reset my mind. I think my reaction to literature or painting is like a one that is a classical one. But I don't, the moment I have a camera and the moment that the camera is in my hand and when I start shooting, I enter a mode that is completely different, visceral, almost animalistic, I don't know how you say. And my reaction is like suddenly, it's like almost a trance or something that's, it's at the same time a trance and a dance with what is happening in front of me, and I don't think I can have any reference. I don't try to get a shot to look so it will look like a painting or it will mimic any things that I read in a poem or in Moby Dick, but I'm confronting something that is way bigger than that. Because reality is always like something that you have to grasp in a different way. So for me, I don't need to clear anything. I don't have to reset the button. It's just in a mode that is completely different. It's a reaction of struggle with the world. No, it's different maybe for you.
No, I mean, I think with our other works, like Foreign Parts and Sweetgrass, you could say there's more effort at exposition or comprehensiveness or narrative up to a point. But even so, it's true that we do research, kind of. Not very systematically. So you learned quite a bit about Willett's Point. I learned quite a bit about sheep herding and transhumance in Montana. With Leviathan, we read and talked to people about the politics of fishing and the ecology of fishing. But we didn't become experts. Yeah. But we were interested. And the obvious thing would be then to say that, well, this knowledge is latent, because there's no exposition, there's not much interpretation. But I'm not even sure it's latent in the films. It's in us in a way, but I, like you, when I'm filming, and even when we're editing, I feel like I just have this instinctual, largely unconscious sense of either struggle or just oneness, almost a kind of beatific oneness with what's happening in front of the camera. Especially with Leviathan on the boat. But even with other things, and I'm sure there are examples from foreign parts. But to take an example from Sweetgrass, there's a shot, the last shot of the film before the credits, is these two men in the pickup truck coming down from the mountain. And I was filming it, I wasn't looking through the viewfinder, I couldn't see the viewfinder, it was on my knee. But I felt there was something powerful in that shot, but I didn't quite know what it was. And the way it's placed in the film and the way it's read by spectators is, there's a lot of pathos to that shot because it signifies the end of something, the end of this practice. And there's a pathos to the shot because the sheep herder, who's closer to the camera, is talking about having a few goats to shear or sheep to tag, but he has such a different relationship to time. But I'm just saying other people read into it all this signification that I didn't feel, or I wasn't aware of feeling at the time. I just knew it had a mystery and a power to me that I was interested in. I didn't know whether the camera would get it. I couldn't see what was going to be in the viewfinder. But it wasn't an understanding or kind of knowledge or rational comprehension of what it was that was powerful. And often we make mistakes. Often you have this very intense experience when you're feeling, and then you're disappointed later. And other times it doesn't appear to be working, and you watch it later, and there's something very powerful there as well.
And the dialectic of learning about a subject is also not, there is not a temporality where we prepare for a film and then we read and then we shoot and then it's done. It's just, I learned so many things after the fact. I learned so many things about fishing after the fact. After the film was done, I started to read about the 4 species of fish that were like really going to disappear, or I learned so many things after, yes, sorry, and I learned also many things, and I continue today, like a month ago, there was a big article in the New York Times about Willett Point. You know, like it's a thing that's going on and on and on, and so I'm still following, I'm still learning, I'm still trying to understand right now, because this is another question, but it's a very important question, that you don't do something and then suddenly it's done and it becomes this product and then you leave it on the side. I think I will keep trying to understand this thing that we were talking about yesterday, like this relationship that human being, we have with the sea for the rest of my life. Every time I will come across a painting, a poem, I will take in, you know, because this is it's like some sort of cumulative work, and you know, and out of that, the same way that suddenly Leviathan was not a film, but was containing all these spirit, all these other things that we found in the film. You know, we continue to think about that. We never know. You know, it can, and the next project can be the same. You know, it's not like we don't have this period of studying, searching, and then shooting. It would be very sad actually if we would do like that. It's not true actually that we are not interested in human, maybe more than many other people. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we want the human to be positioned in the center. It doesn't mean that we want to have an anthropocentric or a logocentric point of view. It means that what we started to pursue right now is just like to reposition the human, like in a bigger you know, matrix, and it doesn't mean that we have no interest for human. The thing is that most of the time we notice that maybe the work of cinema, of art, where there is a deep knowledge of anthropological knowledge behind, but when it's not obvious and in your face, might be 10 times more interesting. Like I'm taking the example of Manaka Mana, where you have a film where there is very few words, no explanation, and it's a humanistic work where the human is not rendered through word or explanation, but where humanity is so blatant, but the ethnographic knowledge is not blatant, is latent, but in a very subtle way. But at the end, it's so much more powerful.
I think, like, you continue to think about Willet's point. I continue to think about the pastoral and transhumance and sheepherding, and we continue to think expectedly and mostly unexpectedly about our relationship to the sea in ways that will haunt us for the rest of our days. But that's not like deliberate. It's not like a deliberate continuity of a project. It's just something that won't let go of us. That's normal because we've had this experience, so you wouldn't want to kill the experience. But I do think our interest, it's not even an interest, but it's almost, but this initiative to resituate that was largely unconscious on our part, but that seems to be getting stronger, this non-desiring endeavor to resituate humanity in a much larger cosmological, ecological context is something that will continue, I suspect, to be developed in ways that we can't yet anticipate in our future work. At the same time, we don't live in the same city, so we don't see each other that often, but we were just talking these last few days about how we desperately want to make or how we'd be totally interested in making a very deeply political film that does wear its politics on its lapel. We'd be interested in making a film de grand public. We'd be very interested in making a film about religion and about spirituality. I could easily see us making, as you say, a logocentric film.
Completely. I was thinking of that too.
I could easily see us making a bourgeois comedy of manners in Paris, à la Desplechin.
No.
I don't know. I really wouldn't be surprised. Whatever, not even detours, but whatever way our work takes us, I do think this interest in rethinking human. It's not a lack of interest in bourgeois or petit bourgeois or human subjectivity and human private lives or human intimacy at all, even though you could argue that most of our films don't develop human subjectivity very far. I think we are deeply interested in that, and I remember constantly on different boats with Véréna and filming in New Bedford how you were utterly fascinated by, or without even being fascinated, how you were utterly engaged in interpersonal dynamics and relationships between fishermen and different people involved in the industry, not intentionally, but you're just apprehending it in a really deep level. So I think our work, even if it might not initially always appear to be so, is very invested in the personal as well as something much larger. But I don't know where it's going to go in the future.
But also, it's not, I would say, to go back to your initial statement or question, it's not that is the humanity is reduced or is minimized or is hurt in the way that we're looking at it. I think it's more like a readjustment, or it's more a question of an equilibrium between the other ontology. It's like it's not that we diminish the human, it's just like we also maybe highlighting the other elements, like be it the sheep and the subjectivity, be it the spare part of the automobile, be it the fish and the nature. So it's just like, rather than, it's just a question of balancing things rather than just crushing the human to the,
Also, I don't know, maybe this is propaganda or wish fulfillment fantasy, but a number of people have said of Leviathan that it's remarkable because it seems as if nature were filming itself. The fish, the sea, the elements, the boat were somehow filming themselves, devoid of human agency. And there is a sense in which it's not a typical human gaze on everything, and I think that's true. And I think that's probably, I think that's one of the virtues of the film, an accomplishment of the film. I think that's something new that people haven't felt in many other films. But at the same time, I think it's even more than our other films, and certainly more than documentary in general, and maybe even fiction in general. I think it's a profoundly anthropocentric film. I don't know if you remember this discussion we had at Beaubourg in front of the public as to whether there's something about it. It seems, it's a new look. Humans become Lilliputians. They become enmeshed in this much larger context. But for that, it actually becomes more human rather than just taking a typical realist look from the outside on Catherine, framing the human, which takes you out, even if it's a human look at the human, you're not a participant, you're an observer, you're a voyeur, you're a vicarious participant. But I think by virtue of this procuration, this vicarious sensory immersion, there's a sense that you are present as a human, even if you don't see much of the typical representation of fishermen that you would expect. If you know what I mean?
I think.
When you're out on the boat, you feel humble, you feel dwarfed, you feel minuscule, you feel you're nothing. But that's a human sensation, and that's what we call. It's not an anti-human. You could say it's post-human, use long words like that, but I think it's a profoundly human sensation to be barely human, or that the human in the end disappears almost at times.
Of course, in front of a work of art, what you expect is to have an aesthetic experience that really will transform you, that does something to you where you feel that the world is not the same, where either you go out of the screening room or the museum, you take something in that will really change you, bouleverse, I don't know. The last time it happened to me, I remember perfectly. This is not every day that you have an experience, like an aesthetic experience that really, really stay with you. The last time I had this aesthetic experience was in Beaubourg, in Paris, and I was in front of a work of Pierre Huyghe, the artist, and it really blew my mind away. And I could not make sense of what was happening on the screen. I could not make any sense of anything, but I was absolutely transported. I was in front of something completely new that was moving me deeply. And I think it's because I had no idea where it will go. I had no sense of where I was going, and I made sense of the work, but later, but I didn't make sense of anything. There was no clarity, there was no, but I had this strong reaction to the work. And for me, when I left, I'd say, okay, for me, this is art. And I have no other explanation. I have no big discourse about art, except this moment where I feel completely, how do you say bouleversé?
Transformed, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed, really. With Leviathan, it would be easy to say that. It's a new experience that people haven't had before. And we became conscious of that while making it, but it wasn't what we wanted to do. I don't think we knew what we wanted to do. We were actually discussing this the other day in Cambridge. I don't know if you remember when we walked out of the Harvard Film Archive. We had an argument.
About what?
We left a film that we were bored by. I don't know what it was, or I was bored by. And I said,
we watch a film?
The only works of art that I like, including films. It's weird that I would say this, and it's kind of banal. I don't know what this means really, but as much as we disavow learning or research or knowledge, we're trying to do things with art that we wouldn't do in the name of academic kind of knowledge. That's about non-knowing or not knowing or half-knowledge or something. I always say, perhaps glibly, that the only works of art that really mean anything to me are those that show me the world in a new way, that I'm actually learning from in some way, that I have an experience or an apprehension or an insight or something that I haven't had before. if I feel that it's déjà vu, or if I feel it's anticipated, then I'm not interested. I feel like it's just repeating something that is there, that we all know, that we all share. And that's true, and I do love those moments when they happen, those aesthetic experiences. But I also realized that we had this discussion that other works and other films in particular that move me are those that don't offer me a novel insight, but that show me, or show one, the world in a way that one immediately recognizes to be absolutely true and authentic, but which one has never seen represented before. So it's a sense that it's something that you immediately realize is there, is real, is banal, is everyday perhaps, but has never achieved form in an aesthetic, crystallized way before. But whether those are two different things in the end, I'm not sure. It sounds like they're two different things. One shows you the world in a new way, and one shows you the world in a way that you recognize, but you've never perceived in a work of art before. I'm not sure how different they are in the end.
We were actually watching Gumo.
From Harmony Korine, was it?
Yeah. You were
maybe
not bored?
I wasn't bored, I liked it. But I did feel that it was a film, some films reward multiple viewings, and I felt that was a film that was super on its first viewing, but it was almost exhausted by its first viewing.
But you Tarkovsky, when I watched Tarkovsky in the archive, you know.
For me, so for Tarkovsky, for example, is somebody who I'd fit into the first frame, somebody whose style is so different from anybody else's, which is basically a way of revealing the world or representing the world or evoking the world or telling a story or representing myth in a way that one hasn't perceived before, rather than giving you this moment of this flash of recognition. I don't see myself in a Tarkovsky film per se, but it's an aesthetic experience unlike any other.
There is a spirituality that you don't know exactly how it's achieved also. Do you see what I mean? I mean like many analyses of his film, but the first viewing, you feel the spirituality, but you don't know exactly how it comes to being, you know, I think. It was fantastic and frustrating. I have a hard time meeting new people and starting to get to know them and then leaving them. So to spend 3 days with those people who came from either Madrid or New York or Sweden or Peru or I don't know, was very moving for us. Also because they were really generous and they were sharing with us in a way that it's not easy to share, you know, a work that is in progress. And I felt frustrated to just like, it's not that we have this, we know we are the teacher and then but it's just like something that is created there that is very intimate, and it's the beginning of a conversation that you have to drop. And I felt like, you know, it's not generous just to abandon the conversation and just leave and be taken back into our life again, and then just like so that's in the same time it was a very rich experience. I think I've learned more than I have given. So it was a real exchange. It was really rich. It was great. It was great, but I feel this frustration and kind of also sadness. You know, there is something that is wrong about like getting to know someone and just leave. After, to be super honest, as we say yesterday, like masterclass, we are not master of anything. We're struggling. We're trying to think. We're trying to understand what we're doing, and it was a very strange experience to be sitting there as if we had a lesson to give, because we don't. But we didn't really. We were trying to share our work and where we were in our thinking. You know, we started there, we did that, it's pretty bad, and then we did that, and it's maybe a little bit better, and then So sharing, it's kind of, we share our doubts and the direction we want to continue to pursue. We're never really comfortable in front of a lot of people, but it's. I think it was good to do it to as a just to share, as other people have been sharing with us.
Yeah. To me, it feels very ungenerous. My feeling. Or if I say this, and I feel it. But the first day of the workshop was very painful and very violent, because that was the day when we just talked for 5 hours about the sensory ethnography lab. And for us, the sensory ethnography lab is nothing. And if you came to see it, you would realize it's nothing. But any world, a world of cinema, a world of art, a world of science, a world of pop culture, whatever, there's always this cult or this construction of celebrities or charismatic authority or whatever. And for some reason people think there's something interesting or exciting about the sensory ethnography lab, but objectively there's not very much that's new about it, and there aren't that many works, and we don't know where they're going. So the first day it felt grotesque to be talking about the sensory ethnography lab, and it also, I think, was painful because we knew how much hope the people in the workshop had pinned on, they'd gone to a lot of expense and effort and interrupted their lives to come here. And I don't think either of us felt adequate, that we would be able to give anything that was worthy of them or their projects. But the second day, I felt that was redeemed in many ways, because even if what we had to say was perhaps completely useless, it was fascinating to us to learn about 11, 12 new projects, really different, with different degrees of potential that one can only guess at this point. And it felt much more reciprocal and sharing, and that we were all in it together, trying to struggle through and think through the problems and possibilities of each of the project. And that to me was much more fulfilling than the masterclass was. It wasn't so much that it was terrifying, but I felt that the danger of trying to explain or to talk about one's own work is that you start giving your version of what you want it to mean, rather than letting the work to talk for itself, or fail to talk for itself. So, and maybe in the effort to trace a little bit of a history through the works that we've done, maybe it became too neat and too tidy, and we were only talking about tiny parts of it. But overall, I think the encounters were really fruitful and fulfilling and enriching and really interesting. It's also really exciting to encounter the people like Los Hierros, whose work we didn't know before, and then to see lots of both affinities and differences. And one always imagines that the world of cinema is super small and that everyone knows each other, but it's really great to suddenly to be able to see 3 films by a collective of 3 people. It's already very unusual and very interesting, and see how they work and how they're trying to think through their relationship to cinema and anti-cinema and history and memory and colonialism and everything they're trying to probe in their films. It's an unmitigated, hellish experience. No, it was ghastly. 300 idiots in the audience. No. How do we know?
No, we don't know.
You have no idea.
I don't know. Nobody say anything. Reach you at the end to the theater.
Yeah, but I can never remember what people say.
Yeah, no, please.
They didn't give us anybody, so they couldn't get it back from us.
No, I really like this guy yesterday with the first question in the master class, the old man with the long hair. I couldn't really make sense of what he was saying.
It's giving us a lesson on lambing and fishing.
No, I mean, it's really hard to have a sense of the audience, except when it's warm or hostile. And I didn't feel any hostility, but just like, it's the same. It's the same frustration. It's the beginning of a dialogue. It's the beginning of something that you can only partially share, because you can, there is something going on with the audience. But no, we had like super nice encounter and discussion after. I'm really glad I met your friend, Paco.
Do you not worry that we don't provoke enough hostility? Thinking like one of the things we read in the workshop was this prologue to Let Us Now Praise Famous Men by James A.G. and Walter Evans.
No, there is hostility, of course.
And they talk about the emasculation of acceptance and what it means. If a work of art can be accepted, it means it doesn't say
But Leviathan is not accepted. Here you have an audience that is already, how do you say that? Acquis à la cause.
They're already converted, they're already cinephiles and everything.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not everybody, but I don't think. I think there is hostility. I don't think that we didn't feel here, you know. But no.
Okay. Well, I hope you had a great time here.
We had a great time.
For sure.
And we actually were thankful for that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.